on one hand, you have, Vaughn points out very rightly, no door knocking, right? No candidate visits, not a single TV ad.
Iowa's been spared.
That's one way to look at it for sure. I think there's a lot of other states that wish that was the case. But on the other hand, you do have to wonder how much of this actually is issue-driven as opposed to candidates showing up 4, 5, 6 times, sometimes in exactly the same place they were just a week ago. And abortion in this case, maybe one of the driving factors. Does it apply to other states, battleground states, that have similar electorates?
I think you nailed the point, though, of this not being a state that has had a ton of messaging and a ton of ads. This is more organic. And this is happening because of events, because of how they are watching the news and interpreting the news from the campaign trail. I think it's saying voters are sick of Trump. I think it actually is voters who are just ready to be done with it. And that's what we're starting to see in this Seltzer poll if the results hold.
David, one of the things that I noted is that Seltzer was in the field from last Tuesday, the 28th.
Sure.
No, excuse me, Monday, the 28th, rather, to Thursday, the 31st. And that was after Madison Square Garden.
That's right.
And it also captures the, I'll protect women, whether women want it or not. But all the ugly racist rhetoric from the introducers as well as the former president himself at Madison Square Garden could have certainly been offending older women.
Oh, absolutely. Look, all politics are now national, whether or not there was a door knocker in Iowa or not. You turn on your news and you get in Iowa the same news you get anywhere else in the country. And it fundamentally supports the theory that this entire race from start to finish is an adjudication of Donald Trump. In many ways, he has a certain air of an incumbency because he was the president, because the country is so familiar with him. And part of being familiar with him and the adjudication of Donald Trump is he gave us Dobbs. He bragged about Dobbs. And so if your vote is informed by reproductive freedom, you hang that on Donald Trump. And then also the rhetoric you heard at Madison Square Garden.
And recently, the closing rhetoric when people are paying more attention.
Listen, women will decide this race, I strongly believe, but not simply on the issue of reproductive freedom. They're going to decide whether or not Donald Trump is fit to lead this country and to be the role model back in the Oval Office. And part of that is what they heard at Madison Square Garden. Part of that is Dobbs. Part of that is misogyny. You go down the list. I think women, black, brown, white, Latina, you name it, you go down the vertical, they are going to turn out and decide this election. And Mark's the master of the minutia. I'll give you the macro. Democrats overperformed in 18, so Donald Trump comes on the scene in 16, pulls off a popular vote loss but electoral college win. Democrats then overperform in 18 with a blue wave. Joe Biden overperforms, unseats a sitting president with about an 80 electoral vote win. And in 22, when there was supposed to be a red wave, Democrats overperform again. So if we see Trump and Republicans do well Tuesday night, it would be the first disruption of that trend that we've seen in 8 years. I think there's a reason, if you're Vice President Harris, to be encouraged. Right?
All right, let's bring in Tim Alberta, staff writer for The Atlantic, author of the new piece, Inside the Ruthless, Restless Final Days of Trump's Campaign. That was not written for TV saying out loud, a TV anchor. Tim, thank you very much for joining us. Bring us inside the ruthless final days of the Trump campaign. What are you hearing?
Yeah, look, I think the takeaway here is that a campaign that was really remarkably professional and disciplined and that had been built upon this idea of restraint, right? The outbursts from Trump are inevitable, the bad behavior, the crazy rhetoric. I mean, you're always going to get some of it because it's Donald Trump. The people running this campaign understand that. And yet there was this idea of, okay, if we can kind of minimize it, if we can try to contain it, and if we can keep him mostly on message around immigration, around the economy, around, strength on the world stage, that we can, if we only perform 10% better than we did in 2020, then we're going to win, and maybe we'll win comfortably. And I think the story here is that for so much of the campaign, they had done that. They had been successful in sort of curbing some of Trump's most self-destructive impulses. And yet, here over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the campaign, it's all started to slip away from them. And Trump, at times, has almost seemed hell-bent on sabotaging himself and sabotaging his own campaign. And it's just left everyone in his orbit feeling totally delusioned here down the home stretch.
Tim, I wonder, and we're watching Donald Trump right now in Raleigh, and Vaughn gave us some great background on what he's been seeing with the Trump campaign over the last week, including the dwindling crowds. At Madison Square Garden, I saw a lot of people leaving maybe 30 minutes into when he was talking. He's been out there 90 minutes plus already. And by the way, that venue, we're told, is about 70% full. He's going back to places he's been to before. Tell me what you see in this closing week and what that might say going forward. Is it possible at all that what we know is the exhaustion factor from the Kamala Harris voters, maybe an exhaustion factor to some extent from some of his own voters? You at one point talked about how the culprit of the problems in the campaign is the man who's addicted to mayhem.
There's no question, when you think about the Trump strategy as of about a month ago, you noticed that as Kamala Harris was beginning her media blitz, she was really for the first time kind of everywhere all at once, doing the late night shows, doing long sit downs. And you noticed that during that same time frame, pretty conspicuously, Trump had pulled back. His people had him doing a lot of these podcasts. They were doing a lot of sort of alternative media, keeping him out of the spotlight. And that was very much intentional because all of the data they have, all of the research that they've done has shown that actually less is more with Trump, and that if they can keep the focus on Harris, if they can just seize on every weird soundbite, anything she says or does that they believe is going to alienate some of these persuadable voters, that is a net positive. Any day where the focus is on Harris is a good day for the Trump campaign. That was kind of the operational theory, and it held up pretty well. But I think what we've seen here over the last couple of weeks, certainly over the last week and a half or so, is that Trump has basically said, no, we're not doing that. Like, I'm going out on my terms. And his terms, I mean, Katie knows this better than anyone. Like, Donald Trump's terms is that he wants all the cameras on him. He wants the crowds. He wants the attention. He wants to be center stage, in the middle of the Trump show. And he is the leading man for better or for worse. And so I think any of the kind of strategic efforts that we saw from his campaign that were pretty effective earlier on have now just completely fallen by the wayside.
Tim, you open your piece with a really terrible epithet that he was using on the plane in the aftermath of the debate about Joe Biden. It's an epithet that hasn't been used in decades about people who are mentally challenged, genetically challenged, Down syndrome people. His campaign advisors talked him out of using it, yet in recent days we've seen him unleashed. We've seen that really crude microphone gesture, which offended a lot of people at a rally, and some of the other things he's done, the violent rhetoric, including what they said later was a joke about what could happen to, the media if they got shot, even though he was protected by bulletproof glass. What is going on there? Is this part of an unraveling because he sees the crowds diminishing and maybe sees some internal polling that they have not shared with anyone?
I can just tell you guys this, based on my reporting from inside the campaign for most of this year. There's always been this strange disconnect in the sense that people around Trump recognize that this election, certainly more than the other two, carry a certain existential consequence for Trump, that if he loses, then he could be facing more convictions and he could be even facing jail time. And so in one sense, you're looking at that and thinking, well, nothing should concentrate the mind like the possibility of going to jail. And people around him have not said that to him directly, but they have sort of emphasized, look, Mr. President, we've got to bear down here. We've got to stay on message. We've got to, if you do these things, if you deliver on these things that we are telling you to do, then we're going to win, right? And at times he seems to have been very receptive to that. And yet, you also have these stretches like the one we're in now, where he almost seems determined to blow this thing up. He almost seems like he wants to see just how close he can get to self-destruction. In the closing days of the campaign, of all things, I was having a conversation Friday night with somebody very close to Trump who was just audibly distraught, talking about how they can't quite understand it, but for whatever reason, he is just in a dark place right now, and just seems like he is closing this campaign on this really negative, violent note, where they want to be running through the tape on this kind of positive, unifying note. And they've just kind of, they all recognize who this man is, that they're working for. They can't force him to say or do what they want him to do, but they were hoping that this campaign would end differently than the way that it's ending. And I think it's really, I use the word just disillusioning. There are a lot of people close to Trump in this moment who are, I think, just despairing over the state of things.